wanted to talk a little bit about the tarot card, the Magician, or the Magus in Crowley's deck, and how it's morphed over time from a craftsperson kind of view or a stage magician into a occultist sort of view of someone who gives forth a new law or is one who's able to change reality through their art. Coming originally from the Visconti Sforza deck around the 1450s and the Mantegna deck, which isn't necessarily a tarot deck but is very similar, as well as the Estensi deck or the Charles VI deck, the Tarot de Marseille, the Pixie Smith Arthur Waite deck, and the Book of Thoth with Lady Frida Harris and Aleister Crowley coming out in 1944. There's lots of transition from each of these cards coming from the craftsperson kind of view or the stage magician kind of view into what looks like the god Mercury himself in Crowley's deck. And we're going to see how these things are connected and how they've changed over time. The clearest example of a magician in the Renaissance or Middle Ages is someone who is able to change people's minds through trickery or sleight of hand or stage and street magic. A lot of these earlier cards depict someone who is using stage magic tricks, such as the Estensi deck, where the character in the card has the traditional cup and balls, where you can con people out of money on the street by pretending to know or not know where a ball is under a cup. It's very similar to 3-card Monte, which is another similar way of getting money out of a sucker on the street who thinks they're smart enough to know the trick when really there is never a way to win. Even in the Tarot de Marseille deck, he also has a cup and balls, but also has much more of a craft person kind of look too, with the carving knife and other various tools, which seems to be split into 2 different cards in the Mantegna deck. One is the Artisan, where he has tools and is building something or fixing something, versus the actual card of Mercury. To me, it seems like the Book of Thoth has combined these ideas, where the artisan and the stage magician is now an actual embodiment of Mercury and has become the god himself, being one who's able to translate the gods. Mercury's skill in mythology was giving the messages of God from Mount Olympus down to the people. And in modern Thelemic literature, this is called the curse of the Magus, in that often messages that come from God are tricky to translate, or may even be so ineffable that they can't be put into words. But as a craft person or an artist, the Magus is able to translate that ineffability into some form of art that he then can give to the people to help show them the words of God or the thoughts of God or the will of God. This curse of the Magus is that when that is done, many people will have subjective views of the art and not understand what is being told. Even if they love the art, they may not get the message, or sometimes the message is so obscure that it's just unable to be understood. So the Magus is often seen as someone who is giving falsehoods, because the message they're relaying is one that is impossible to interpret. This connects the Magus very much so with the traditional view of the stage magician, who is doing literal lies and trickery in order to perpetuate their wonder and their awe. So that's where the stage magician and the holy magician meet, is in the perpetuation of awe and wonder. But one uses sleight of hand and particular methods that are taught and very physical, while the other uses a much more abstract translation of ineffable experience into some sort of artistic medium, both of which require massive amounts of craft. It should be noted too that the Tarot de Marseille deck's name for this is Le Bateleur meaning juggler in French, but it comes from an Old French word, bastel, meaning to be stylish, and a cognate of that word is the German Bestelen, which means to be a craftsperson or a tinkerer or one who tinkers or a DIY kind of creator, much aligned with the artisan or the craftsperson in general. Another interesting way in which the stage magician and the holy magician are connected is, and also through their shared versions of deception, is through the card of the devil. Most of the Magician tarot cards have some sort of image of one hand up and one hand down. Even in the Tarot de Marseille, one hand is up and one hand is down. And very clearly also in Crowley's deck, one hand up and one hand down. This is often interpreted in a much more Western occultist tradition from the image of Eliphas Levi with Baphomet, where it has one hand up and one hand down, the Salve et Coagula formula, and the basis for most depictions of the devil ever since it was created and drawn, I think in the 1860s. Something that I think is pretty interesting about the Visconti Sforza deck with the devil card, although this, I believe, is a recreation, he has both hands up, but if you look closer, one hand is a fake hand. He has his other hand down holding a fake hand up. The symbol of the hailing sign, or I'm cool dude, is giving the illusion that he's chill and worth being around, but he's also a deceiver, having one hand actually down but with a fake hand up. This is often seen as some sort of nefarious thing, but sometimes tricks can be what gives us wonder and creative inspiration and allows us to grow as artists and become better magicians ourselves. On the other hand, from a stage magic point of view, it's pretty hilarious to interpret this as misdirection, where one hand is up and the other hand is under the table doing a trick that you can't see. And while you look over here, this hand does something that you aren't paying attention to. That's also one of the main ways in order to accomplish a magic trick, is to misdirect someone and do a motion or a craft in the other hand, and then direct their attention back and something's changed and they don't know how it was done. "'Tis an ill wind that blows no minds," in the words of Malcalypse the Younger. I would say if anyone's interested in wanting to understand this card more, it would be super beneficial to practice card magic or coin magic or trickery in general as a way to understand a different side of this card separate from the mercurial holy magic aspect, as well as just hone your art and practice as much art as possible. For a more complex interpretation of this card, I would recommend all occultists and people interested in the tarot to read through The Vision and the Voice, Liber 418 from Aleister Crowley, which has tons of interesting ways of interpreting this card specifically, but also many other cards in the tarot, often in new and novel ways that demonstrate a way that it's grown through the development of the Aeon of Horus, or the reception of the Book of the Law, or other Thelemic holy texts. It's a bit too deep for this kind of video, where I want to just explore some symbolism on the cards, but I think very worth it nonetheless. It's also worth noting that the painter Hieronymus Bosch has a awesome and hilarious painting called The Conjurer, in which a stage magician has a person enthralled so much so that they're drooling on the table, while his accomplice, or even just some bystander who isn't so worried about the magic, is stealing that man's coin purse, and a little child is staring and laughing at him from under the table. When researching this painting, apparently there's an old Flemish proverb: "He who lets himself be fooled by conjuring tricks loses his money and becomes the laughingstock of children." The iconography is very similar to the older Middle Ages decks of the stage magician or street magician. On a more technical level, Arthur Waite was often very secretive about the Kabbalistic attributions that the Golden Dawn applied to the tarot cards, and never divulged them explicitly, but would often put little clues in them. Some of his cards have very obvious clues, but the magician is slightly more obscure. David Allen Hulse, in his book The Western Mysteries, notes that the flowers that sort of frame the magician card look a lot like the Hebrew letter Bet, which is the letter that relates to this card and also to the god Mercury. He also notes that the infinity symbol above the magician's head is a sideways 8, and in the Kabbalistic Tree of Life, Mercury relates to the sphere of Hod, which is the 8th sphere. These are the two clues that I've been able to find that Arthur Waite put into this deck to give people potentially a chance of figuring out these Kabbalistic connections. This is a bit more obscure and only for people who are interested in the tradition of the Golden Dawn or have joined Crowley's AA, the Book of Thoth has the actual letter and planetary symbol for Mercury on the card, which Crowley didn't really worry about keeping these things secret. There are much greater secrets within the tarot, and true secrets keep themselves. These are more formalities that older Victorian people thought were too valuable for the public to know. Lastly, there's also an awesome YouTube video by the stage magician and UFO investigator Chris Ramsey, where he interviews many magicians about experiences of unexplainable events that happened during their stage magic. This is one of my favorite kind of stories because it, again, is a reconciliation of this stage magic and this holy magic, and points a bit to the idea of fake it till you make it, where if you spend your life doing stage magic that is sleight of hand and simple tricks, the more you do that, the more you actually become connected with the deeper, truer magic of Mercury and his translation of ineffable experience into any kind of art. I'll leave a link in the description below for this video. It is awesome to hear these magicians talk about this because often they are the ones who are the most jaded when it comes to the paranormal. For example, people like James Randi, who spent their whole lives trying to disprove there was anything going on outside of materialism. I think that's a very limited view, and I think he's sort of an enemy of occultism in general. But to have all these magicians who were not raised in any sort of religious context or without any sort of experience of magic or the paranormal to come to that idea and experience these unexplainable events through their stage magic is an awesome testament to the reconciliation between the artisan and Mercury himself. I hope to make some more videos exploring symbolism in the tarot, and if you made it this far into the video, thank you so much for listening.